and live. Woo! Let's hit it. Go this.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. Hi, Nitin.
Hello.
Welcome to Thought Improvisation. Is everything working?
Yeah,
The,
perfect.
the video seems to be a little bit like stuck.
Yeah, maybe I'm moving.
I don't know. I think it's really stuck actually. I can hear you perfectly though.
Maybe I disconnect the video and connect again.
Try again.
Yeah.
Okay, now it works. Perfect. Okay, man. Cool. Hey, Nitin. Great to see you again. It's been
Yeah, likewise.
so we know each other since from Shanghai, my Shanghai days.
Yeah.
When I first
8 years.
say again.
8 years now.
8 years. So you've been in Shanghai for 8 years. When I first moved there, you were my first flatmate. You were my first friend in Shanghai.
Yeah.
And 8 years later, I'm in Paris. You're still in Shanghai. I
Yeah.
think you are one of the hardest working people I've sort of ever met. You always have stuff going on. You're always busy, and the way you speak, like the way you sort of compose your body, even it's just like you have a mission. I think you're on some sort of a crazy mission. So I think it's really
Thank you. It's a mission, but also it's not a choice.
no. It's like how so? Is it like it's in your spirit or what is it? Where's that from? Where's this?
I think I think for me it just so happens that after one point of time you just know more, and it's impossible when you know more to not do something about it, right? I mean, if you know that there is this guy there and that guy there and this person there who are doing some incredible projects,
Right.
and if you know you can support them and in a way help them achieve their goals and also achieve your own goals,
Right.
then it's just something to say hard to say no to. And
Right.
for even though I say no to a lot of things, I'm still not able to say no to enough things to not be
Wow.
busy.
It's not a skill to learn to say no.
Yeah,
But you have
yeah.
to-
Shanghai, the biggest disease in Shanghai is busyness,
Right.
and if you can learn to stay away from that,
Yeah.
you have some time for yourself. Others get.
Is the video working? Connection lost. There was a problem with the network. Okay. Well, meanwhile, Nitin has lost in translation. I'll check the live stream. Nitin, are you
I'll
there?
come in. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
hear
I'm
you
here.
now. It just dropped out for a second.
Yeah.
I'm just checking in the meantime. Let me just see the link. Okay, it works. Perfect. I just checked our live stream, so it's working. So yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So you said the disease in Shanghai was being busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially for you. So I mean, okay. So just quickly, you've been in Shanghai for 8 years. You've done a lot of different projects. So I want to talk about like your coming to Shanghai. Why did you do that? Your experiences so far in work-wise, career-wise, choices you made, projects you've worked on, personal development, and also kind of like your future plans. And I think it could be interesting to listen to for people that want to move to Shanghai or China or just broader in general, and that
Right.
want to be an entrepreneur, set up something, that want to, may have an impact somehow.
Right.
Because you've done a lot of these things. And so first of all, like, why did you were from India
Yeah.
and you moved to, so what is your background? What did you study? Like,
My background is in architecture. I graduated as an architect from Bangalore. I worked there for a year or so. And then I moved to Singapore. I worked there for a couple of years. That's
as
when,
an architect.
as an architect, and that's when the financial crisis happened.
Ooh.
And I guess I was going through my own personal crisis. And I realized that the kind of architecture I was doing was not something I was enjoying. I was not enjoying Singapore. I was not really, just happy with the work I was doing. I mean, I just felt like it was very, very, I just felt the work was very selfish, and you were just doing stuff because people asked you for it, not because it was the right thing to do. And I think that's when the financial crisis, I think for a lot of people, it gave them a lot of stress, it gave them a lot of trouble, let's say. But I think for me, it gave me a great opening because I actually got laid off, you know. And
Cool.
sometimes in your life, you wish someone else made the decision for you. And I think that was just what I needed at that point of time because I was just too, let's say, scared to leave my job and be in an expensive city like Singapore without a job, try to find something else. Maybe I don't find a job and so on and so forth.
Right.
But I think finally when I did get laid off, I think it was really, really great because I had to make do with what I had at hand, right? And it was basically that I had to leave Singapore, which was not a city that was making me happy. So I took it as a great opportunity to really move to the next step because I realized that I was not very happy with the way architecture was being done. I just decided that, hey, you know, the financial crisis is going on. It'll be on for a few years. Why not use it as a time to upgrade myself in terms of knowledge and information and network? And this is when I left Singapore. I moved to Milan to do my master's in design management, which is, I always say it's more like an MBA in design fields rather than finance and economics and marketing. So I think for me, I was in Milan. It was an amazing atmosphere. I loved the city. I loved the people there. Made some really great friends.
Yeah.
And for the next 1 year, incredible coffee, incredible croissant, great food. It was 1 year in my life that I never missed Indian food. And I think it was also, I always say it was probably the best year of my life. It was difficult, but I learned so much. It was actually not just learning a lot, I was unlearning a lot. And that was more important for me. Because up until that point of time, I was maybe 23 or 24, let's say, 25 even. And, you know, I had gone through that typical journey of going to school, to study hard, to get a good college degree, to get into a good company, to get a high paying job and so on and so forth. And that's the way I think, you know, our society has worked. But I think when and this is what I followed. I did in India, I did in Singapore. I wasn't very happy. Yeah. And then when I moved to Milan, I saw people, you know, let's say a good bunch of people really enjoying what they did, even though they were not making a lot of money.
You're like, what the hell is this? Why are people smiling? Why are everyone so happy here? This is crazy.
Why is everyone so passionate? You know, this guy runs a
drunk or what's going on there? So I can tell.
Yeah, and so that gave me a really, really, you know, good opening to say that, hey, you know, I mean, yes, it's not just about, yes, money is great if you can get it. But apart from that, it's also what you do with your life and with your work and if you're enjoying it or not. And I think at that point of time, I realized that I did not have to really be in a crazy corporate job that was really paying me a lot of money but not giving me a lot of satisfaction. And the next 1 year in Milan, I traveled a lot. I did a lot of teaching. I learned photography that I was already involved in.
Cool.
I worked at a studio and I met some incredible people, and that really, really changed my way of thinking. And I read a lot. I saw a lot of really great movies that I had not seen before. Not just, you know, the superhero science fiction stuff, but really like really good movies as well. Okay, as you know, I don't enjoy science fiction and superheroes, but I saw some really good movies. And I think just that 1 year of my life in Milan was really a big phase of development, and that really, really made me grow quite a bit. And I think that's after Milan, I had the opportunity to come to Shanghai for a master's internship. And I loved Italy. I would have loved to stay there and work there and everything else, but I think the timing was not great from a financial crisis point of view. So I came to Shanghai for my internship because again, for an Indian back then, 10 years ago, 9 years ago, coming to China was like, who the hell goes to China? You know, I'd rather just go back to India. And that was my mindset as well. I had no idea what China was like, but I just thought I knew what it was like based on what the media had kind of reported to us back home.
Sure.
And so I said, you know what? I'm anyway never going to go to China. Let me just go there for a few months, do my internship, come back, and I'll find a job in Italy. And I came to Shanghai without speaking a word of Chinese. Shanghai, I already had friends in Shanghai. You know, I remember I was doing couch surfing during one such trip to Spain, and in the same couch surfing place, there was a guy from Shanghai, and that was the day I was actually applying for my internship to Shanghai. And he said, Nitin, if you ever get the internship, and if you come to Shanghai, let me know. You can stay at my place, you know. Cool. And I think things just began falling in place. And here I come to Shanghai in October 2010, and the place is nothing like what I'd ever imagined. Right. And for a city of this size, this scale, this many people, when I compared it with India, it was really a lot organized and safe, and infrastructure was already at a great point. And I think somehow I had already made up my mind that this is where I had to stay after my internship, because going back to India was too early. I didn't want to go back to Singapore, and in Milan there were no jobs. So that's when I kind of decided that even after my master's internship, I'll continue staying in Shanghai. and continue doing more and more stuff. And then I just continued working in the same company that I was doing my internship. And that company was actually focused on branding and communication. And for me, as an architect, it was a really, really good kind of switch, because I realized that it's not just enough to design stuff, but I think you also have to be able to see the big picture and communicate well about it, right? It's not just, hey, I've designed this incredible, vase, but I think you have to really connect that with things around it, the people around it. So I think branding and communication was really, really important for me. And that's when also I got connected with, this organization called Green Drinks, Green Initiatives.
Yeah.
And it's been 8 years since I've been doing that now.
Wow. Okay, wow, that's cool. So, yeah, I mean, there are so many points here, like important points you touched on. So basically, one was that, from a crisis, you managed to learn something. It's always like that, right? It's like you have this down period, and then you kind of have to kick yourself in the butt and pick yourself up, and then you have to throw yourself up again, and then you learn a lot of different things. So you really turn this losing your job in Singapore into something great, which I think everyone. It's interesting, because I think everyone having done that, they kind of know that every sort of crisis is going to bring something new, something fresh. But I think recognizing it in the moment is really, really difficult, because you just sort of.
That's the most challenging thing, right? When you're going through it, it's just so challenging. How do you persevere and get out of it?
Right. And
I think being busy and being creative and knowing good people and having good friends, that really helps at that point of time.
Right. And also, yeah, there were so many points. And you mentioned that, so you realize that, because I think most people go through life, or a lot of people, they go through, they're kids, they grow up, they have to learn things, basic things, they go to school, they learn social interaction, and then, they have these needs, they want to make money, especially for guys. I can't talk so much about girls, but for guys, I think it's sort of important to get for many guys at least, like a good job, go to a good university, get a good job. You learn what good means, but then at some point you have like a shift, and you understand that, well, it's really not about the money. It's about something else. And then you kind of go on this rediscovery thing. You kind of have to, like you said, unlearn things you learn, and then you have to sort of figure out what is this thing all about. It seems you understood that early.
Yeah. And I think the biggest issue always is when we live too much of our life in this autopilot mode, right?
Yeah, right.
When we're just doing things because other people are doing it, and we have no idea of why we're doing it. And I think this is one thing where I've been a little more stubborn since I was a kid. I always questioned a lot, like, why the hell should I do it like this? Or why should I listen to you if I think I'm right? I mean, it's, I always challenge things a little bit more. And this probably came a little in handy, especially at those crucial phases of my life.
Right.
Like I was quite sure at times of what I should be doing.
Yeah. Cool. And you also mentioned so you mentioned there was a Chinese guy when you're doing couch surfing, and he said just, hey man, you stay at my place. This is a completely different question. How are Chinese people? Because it's a very different culture. And I think for me, it changed the perception before Shanghai, the first years in Shanghai, and then like having lived in Shanghai and really gotten to know, or I should say Shanghainese people or Chinese in general. And then after when I left Shanghai, it's like, how do you consider Chinese people? Because the culture thing, and like, are they, how would you characterize them?
See, I think like most nationalities, there are all kinds of people. Of but if there is one quality that is probably a lot more common to most people in China, is I would say people are a lot more pragmatic and a lot less emotional, So it's very, very hard to get through to them, There is always a certain point where you reach, and then beyond that you cannot reach. Like, for example, in my 8 years here, I've met some amazing Chinese people, and I've met a lot of them who are just like following the crowd. But even then, I probably just have 2 or 3 or 4 friends who are, or really good friends, close friends who are Chinese. Right, and, okay. I always say that if someone like me has not been able to make a lot of Chinese friends, then there is a certain quality in people here, which is not like good or bad. It's just the way people are, that, they are a bit too pragmatic, a little less emotional. And me as a person, I'm very, very emotional, or let's say I'm quite sensitive, right? So I do find that gap hard to cross.
Right.
But having said that, especially in the last 1 or 2 years, I've met some incredible people. I don't know whether it's the nature of my work, whether it's just the friends I've kept who've introduced me to other friends, But some like at least the 3 or 4 of the Chinese friends that I have right now are amazing.
Right.
And even there is one friend who I've known since the last 8 years, since my very, very first days in Shanghai, and that is our common friend, and I'm still in touch with her.
Sure.
Yes, we are not close friends per se, but we are still friends. And I know that if I need a help, I call her, she'll help me, and vice versa.
Right.
So, as people, I think yes, it's hard to get through to the heart, or maybe the heart aspect is a bit quieter. Because I feel that's not the way they've been brought up. They've just been brought up in very, very pragmatic style. And I'm sure their own upbringing has been quite harsh for them to recognize their own kind of, emotional side.
So how about doing business in China? Do you have any tips there? Like the people that are coming to China don't really know, like how can they, I mean, of course you can Google how to do business in China and you get like the list of top 10 things you need to watch out for. But like how are Chinese in the business?
I think generally they're hardworking. And if they see that there is value in it for them, then they'll do it. I mean, I think it's the same with most people. But I think especially here, I mean, I think a Chinese person who has a regular job versus a Chinese person who's an entrepreneur, it's two different attitudes.
Sure.
Like if you are coming to do business in China and you hire 20 Chinese employees or even 5 Chinese employees, I think the approach would be different. And if you're coming here to do business and you're doing business directly with a Chinese entrepreneur, the approach is going to be different. And especially when someone is an entrepreneur, you really have to show them what the value is in it for them, and then they will do whatever it is to make it happen. And if it's an employee kind of situation, it's really hard. I think that's where you have to really know some basic, simple, cultural, rules or cultural kind of aspects of having people on the team.
Right.
So in general, I think they're not bad people to work with. But yes, I think it's really important to understand the culture, and especially when it's a business-to-business relationship between, let's say, 2 entrepreneurs, then I think you look for some common shared value. And I think one thing which is very, very, very important is also it's important to have things written. Sometimes contracts don't make sense here, or they don't hold a lot of relevance here. But I think you really have to have things written down as much as possible. Like right now, we're all living in this world of WeChat, where everything happens over WeChat. But even till date, as a company, we make sure that all business transactions happen over email or over contracts. And even if someone has signed us stuff up on WeChat, we still try to take it to emails. So I think it's very, very important to maintain documentation of your conversations and discussions with people when you're doing business, because that part gets lost very easily.
Yeah. And I think personally, if you come there as a Westerner, and the Western style is more aggressive and individualistic, and the Chinese are more harmonious. They to make a decision, they require more sort of people to agree on things. And I think a lot of Westerners they mistake the Chinese sort of silence or something for not weakness, but the Western way is very sort of aggressive, I think. And I think you should really, when you come to like you say, when in Rome, do as the Romans. When you go to China, be respectful and listen. Like, I think that's a really cool thing about, I found in China, that they're really open to listening to your ideas. They're very open. They're very open to Western culture, and they really like it somehow. They're really interested. Like the couchsurfing guy, he said, "No, come to my place. You can stay here." They're really, I think, open and really want to help you somehow. Very, very curious, which I find sometimes the Western mentality is a little bit more, I already know I'm better than you. And, you have this not very humble approach. And I see this also after leaving Shanghai. My perspective changed when I was there to when I'm here. And it's cool in Paris, where I live. There's a Chinatown here. I interact with a lot of Chinese. I go to Chinese restaurants. They're always hustling, man. They're always hustling. They always got stuff going on. And the Chinese people are doing the Tai Chi.
Your voice is breaking up a little bit.
Okay. Okay, cool. So, right. So let me ask you about your business ventures in Shanghai. You're doing a green initiative. So what is that? And it's environmental area. And why is that important? Is that something that you really are passionate about? And what do you want to do with it? What's the plan there?
This is what I started. This is what I started working on, I guess, 7 years ago. Back then, it was just a monthly group of people coming together at events to talk about environmental issues. But I think, of course, at the stage of development that China is in, there is a lot of development happening, but there is also a lot of environmental destruction happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is something I kind of realized from my very, very early days in Shanghai, that as the country really develops, I think the environment is going to be a lot more important and a lot more challenged. And I think we needed more information and more, just more awareness on this. And this is how we started. We started very early, like 9, 10 years ago. Like, so my organization, the roots of the organization are, let's say, 2 years before I came to Shanghai. And from the very early days, the focus was on awareness, was on education, on environmental issues.
Yeah.
And as I got involved and started working more, I think we gradually began shifting from awareness to behavioral change to action, and also from being a monthly networking group, an eco-networking group, to a non-profit organization, to a social enterprise. So right now, as of date, in January, we actually celebrate 10 years of green initiatives in Shanghai. When we moved on to be more, to call ourselves a social enterprise that's focusing on awareness and action on environmental issues. A big aspect of our work is focused on education, on training, on workshops, and on really creating a community of people really inclined to work further to raise environmental awareness and create solutions for the challenges that we see around us. And one other project that we are working on called Seeds of Change. It's really, it's a partly learning. It's basically a platform and a marketplace that is aimed at connecting people who want to learn and people who want to share. So basically a marketplace for connecting learners with experts on environmental and social issues. Because again, we realize that there is more and more people who want to learn. Now, how do you really provide them the right information and the right breadth of options to choose from? And because we've been active in the community, we've organized about 500 events in Shanghai in the last 10 years, attended by more than 25 to 30,000 people. I think we've managed to build a really, really strong, vibrant, and fun community of individuals who work on environmental, on the environmental scene. So the goal of the platform is to really connect people who want to learn and people who want to share, and just help people gain more knowledge on the subject.
Okay, and that's environmental issues in China in particular, or is it just environmental?
So it's starting, most of our work is focused on environmental issues in China, but at the end of it, the environmental issues are global.
Sure.
What affects China affects the world. What affects the world affects China. I firmly believe in that. So, I think it's hard to say it's just China. Yes, the big focus of our work right now is people and companies in China, but environmental problems are global. So It's hard to say, we're focusing only on China. A lot of we've screened about 100 documentary films in the last 6 years on environmental and social issues. And a lot of the films are just global films, talking about global issues that affect Asia, that affect China.
Right. So do you have any advice of people thinking now, okay, they want to have an adventure, they want to leave home, just like you did. They want to go abroad. They're thinking about Shanghai or China or somewhere else. Do you have any, what are the tips? You're an international, you're an expat, you're a true expat. You're an entrepreneur, you're an expat, you've done a lot of stuff, you learned a lot quite fast in your life. What do you say to these people? Do you have any advice?
What I would say is that I think people who want to be entrepreneurs don't even have time to call themselves an entrepreneur, they don't even think in that way. You just become one, and then you realize a few years down the line that you've been running your own business. So I think being an entrepreneur anywhere is just really, it's really, it asks a lot out of you. It's challenging. It's complicated. It could be frustrating. So I think being an entrepreneur anywhere is difficult, but in China all the more. I always say that, 1 year of being in China is equivalent to 4 years of being somewhere else,
How so?
There is a lot of,
because so much is happening?
I think one is so much is happening, but I think just as an entrepreneur, the kind of administrative and legal things you have to deal with here, contracts, administrative stuff, invoices, payments, banking system, taxations, these are all really, you never realize them when you're employed by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But trust me, once you run your own company, these are really crazy things. We've been around for 10 years, but we registered our company in China for the first time 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it took us about a year and a half or 2 years almost to really kind of get a hang of how the entire thing works. And we're still learning every other day because there are rules changing all the time and there's new rules coming up and all that stuff. So I think it is quite challenging to run a business here. The other thing I also say is that I think there are enough businesses of all kinds here. There's everyone selling any damn thing in the world. They're all here. It's already here. And I think what can really differentiate people from running a business just like any other business here versus, someone who's really here in the, with a little bit more serious mindset is not just how can I go to China and make a fortune. I think it should really be more about how can I go to China and create value for people, or how can I add value to people's life? Like there's everyone here and everywhere doing all kinds of shit, but very, very few people who are actually doing things that are meaningful, that add a certain positive value to people's life. Most people are like, okay, you know what? Here's one more thing that I'm going to sell, and there's one more thing the consumer is going to buy. And I think this is the way I think we really need to change our own mindset, where it's not just about buying and selling. It's about creating shared value, which aligns with the overall, global challenges, environmental issues and whatnot. So I think this is one thing I think people should think about. One other thing, I would suggest for people who really want to be entrepreneurs here or run a business here, spend the first 6 months learning the language. I mean, at least spend the first 6 months, half a day, 5 hours or 4 hours every day learning the language. That will make your life infinitely easier as you spend more time here. That's one thing I could never do because I always had a job, and when I had a job, I didn't have the money and the time. And then when I have the money and the time, when I have the money, I don't have the time. So I could never do that. So I can still speak conversational Chinese and I can still have my way, but it would have been infinitely easier and better for me if I had a slightly more proficient reading and writing abilities in Chinese. So I would highly, highly recommend people to spend the first 3 to 6 months just learning the language.
Okay, cool. Right. Yeah, interesting. So now you've been there for 8 years, and you learned a lot. You said from the losing the job in Singapore and Milan. Now you've been 8 years in Shanghai. So what's like, what have you like? At what stage are you at now? Like, what is for you the next thing? Like, because I guess you learned a lot in China, and you take all that knowledge and then you do something else, or are you going to continue doing what you're doing, or are you going to do something completely different? Or what is next for you?
I think there are a few things that, that I'm planning and doing, and I think they're all possible. I think the organization now being 10 years, we have some really responsible and trustworthy people in the team. So I think the first step is to really just, help the organization continue to run and sustain and thrive and really build a team that can continue doing it. It would be a shame if we did this all for 10 years and it all came to an end, right? We really want, if we talk about sustainability of the world, I think we have to talk about the sustainability of our own organization. So I think that is something, so that is something that we're really trying to do. So we have a few full-time people on the team now. It's taken us 9.5 years to have our first full-time person, but I think we got a great person in the team, and so hopefully he'll be taking green initiatives to the next level. The other thing is, I think in the last 1 year or more, I think if there's one area my mind has focused a lot more, or there are two areas where my mind has focused a lot on, one is education. I really feel the global educational system in most countries, China, India, wherever, is really messed up. And I think we really need to do something that really offers an alternate model for learning and doing, because our current educational systems, they prepare us for jobs, but they don't prepare us for life, whether it's emotional intelligence, whether it's climate change and global warming, whether it's responsible leadership. I think we don't learn these kind of things. So the two big focus for me in the next 4 to 5 to 10 years would really be, education, more education. And number two would be leadership, but not just random shit leadership where the focus is on profitability and shareholder benefit and all that nonsense. I think for me, leadership is about ethical leadership. When you are faced with a certain question in front of you of, screwing up the planet versus making a lot of money, how do you take better decisions that kind of affect your company but also positively affect the planet, right? And whether you take the financial crisis, whether you take all the stuff that we're dealing with right now, I think a big issue with the world we see right now is because our leadership does not know better, right? Everyone is out there to make money. Very, very few people care about how good or bad they're leaving the world behind, right? I mean, why is there's so much money, there's so much of brains in the world. Why aren't we still able to solve food security, food safety, and all these different things? Because I feel a lot of people are working for recognition, they're working for power, they're working for money. And I think there is very few ethics involved in that.
Right.
And I really feel that the next decade or so should really be focused on not just random leadership, where you're looking to get 20 billion evaluation for your company and so on and so forth, but really about ethical leadership and how do you really create a company that creates value and does the right things. So these two topics are going to be really important for me in the next 5-10 years. And the third thing connected with this is I'm trying to make a plan to move back to India in the next 2 to 3 years, where I'm now looking for land not very far from Delhi or Bangalore, and then the goal is to set up a learning center where a learning center where the focus is on education, on leadership, ethical leadership, and really on preparing people to really be more responsible global citizens.
Right. So that's all the things you're talking about now. These like things that come to mind are there's a problem with incentives or incentive system in the world. Like all the big problems you're talking about now, the corruption, power hungry people, the focus on money. I think its incentives are wrong. I think there's probably something fundamentally in the human sort of DNA, which is a hard one.
I wouldn't say DNA, I would just say fundamentally wrong. And when I say fundamentally wrong here, this is why I say a big emphasis is on the education system. Right. We were not taught these things, We learned physics, chemistry, maths, biology, and all that shit. Did we learn ethics? Did we learn ecology? Did we learn emotional intelligence? No, we didn't learn any of these things that we use for real every single day in the real world.
Right. Cool. So yeah, of course. I mean, there's so many things. Like even just, this is like another rant, but like learning how to learn. It should be the first class you do at school. It's like, how do you? So we know you're going to be at school for 10 or 12 years, whatever, or even longer. And so you're going to learn. You're going to use your memory and your abilities to learn. So let's have a course on how to learn, how to increase your memory, how to remember things, how to understand things. It's like, no, we don't have that. You kind of stumble into it maybe after 8 or 9 years. Like, I can actually improve my memory. It's easy techniques. And you have to, you can use pictures to remember things. But no one taught me that stuff. Or even, it seems, and that seems like everyone kind of knows this, but nothing is going on. So
there isn't more and more stuff going on, right? Yeah. The challenge is we learn about all these things when we go through when we come to the 20s or when we are late teenagers, when we go through our own midlife crisis. That's when we start exploring for answers and we find things that we should have technically learned 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, if you're born with really great parents that teach you this stuff, you're really lucky, But if you're not, then you kind of have to figure this out yourself. So sure. I mean, the human race could be on such a wonderful trajectory, if we, if, and of course it is education. Everything is education and how you treat people and these things. So, and also I think the only way to learn is sort of through experience. You can sort of read a book and everything, but you kind of have to go through it yourself.
Absolutely.
What's your take?
But I think at the same time, it's knowledge plus experience, right?
Right. Sure.
If you just blankly wait for experience, the experience could happen when you're 5, it could happen when you're 15, it could happen when you're 50, right? Mm-hmm. But at least you need to have the knowledge and then the experience will come sooner or later.
Exactly.
But at least you need to have the right information, the right tools, the right knowledge. Yeah. And this is something we don't have.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, cool. So how about personal lessons for you? We talked a lot about business and things like you can call it spiritual or personal development. Like how have you grown as a human being, as a man, as a leader, what shifted inside of you, and what kind of advice would you give your kids if you had them, in terms of being a human being?
I think that is one, I would say, good part about being in Shanghai, that you do meet incredible people from all walks of life, from all age groups, working on all kinds of things. And even though every now and then you might meet a rather unpleasant person, I think I'm a bit more lucky here because the kind of work that I do, which is focused on a certain, certain social impact, focus, I meet amazing people who are working on the same line as well. So I always say that one big reason why I have been able to do what I've been doing for such a long time is because I've met amazing people from who I've learned a lot and from who really inspired me as well, right? Like an example I would give is my boss. I have so I run this organization half my time, and the other half my time I have a full-time job where we are creating healthier buildings. So we created the world's first building certification that's completely tech-based, sensor-based, that focuses on buildings and spaces to make them healthier for people.
Mm-hmm.
He's an architect as well, and he's been in Shanghai for 17 years.
Wow.
18 years now, right? And this guy is so humble. He is, he trusts people, and his personality is such that people don't break his trust. And I've learned so much from him about how to manage people, how to manage situations, how to stay calm, how to be kind, and how to trust people. And if he hadn't, I've been working with him for the last 4 or 5 years, which is where my salary comes from. But if I hadn't had this job, I couldn't have done any of these things with green initiatives. Right. So I think it's really, really important to be surrounded by a good group of people. And sometimes, you meet the occasional assholes. But I think when you meet good people, then you see that, hey, you don't need to be dealing with that kind of shit, right? You shouldn't be working with that kind of people. I think being careful, I think my personality type is just such that I attract a lot of narcissistic people towards me. Okay. And I think this is something I think we all need to be really, really beware of. I think it's really, really important as individuals to be aware of people in our life that pull us down or that really make us feel like shit. And again, these are things you don't really understand. But, it's really important because once you identify that someone has this kind of trait, it's easier to accept it. It's easier to have a way to deal with it. But when you don't know, you just keep shooting in the dark. You keep saying, hey, I'll work it out. Oh, it'll be better. Oh, he'll be better tomorrow. But some things don't change. Some personalities, types don't change. Of course, and I've been reading a lot as well. I've been reading some really, really nice books. One of the best books I've read, two of the best books I've read recently. One of the books inspired me for my project in India as well. Although my project that I'm planning in India has been on my mind for 3 years, this book really reinforced the fact that I should do it. It's called The Abundance of Less by an American writer called Andy Coutier. And he has documented the lives of 10 Japanese people who are very educated, very civilized, and they've left their lives in the cities to live in the countryside, to live a life of self-sufficiency. And they spend a lot of time doing stuff every day with their hand, writing, reading, farming, making simple stuff. And, they really, really are truly happy and content. And it's a great example of the other extreme that we're dealing with, a city like Shanghai and living out in the countryside in a completely different kind of environment. Mm-hmm. So this is one great book I've read. And the author, the writer of the book was in Shanghai this June. We invited him. I got to spend some personal time with him for 2 or 3 weeks. And it was really, really inspiring. The other book that I've read this year, which I think you might have read as well, is a book by an Austrian guy called E.F. Schumacher, Small is Beautiful. But this is an incredible book. I mean, I'm like, why the fuck didn't I read this book 20 years ago? Yeah. And I feel that and this book came out 55 years ago.
Wow.
And if this book is taught to every single human being who goes to school, the world would be very different as well. So again, I think for me, it's been a mix of good luck, coming from the fact that I've been doing this line of work. But this line of work, environmental education, awareness, activism is not easy. It is very, very challenging, and you really have to be thick-skinned to kind of keep doing it for 8 years. Right. And I think my reward, let's say, for that is I meet amazing people. I feel a lot more satisfied in myself. Even though I don't have a typical corporate job where I make typical crazy amount of money, I make less, but I have less needs as well. And for me as a person, I've realized that we can live better, live healthier, live happier, spend time with people we enjoy spending time with, be kind to people, trust people, be flexible, be open, and just not follow the stereotypical autopilot mode, because most of us are unfortunate that we just follow this autopilot mode because we don't know anything better. Yeah. But I think nothing that anyone tells us has to be that way. And as also in relationships, we don't have to get into relationships just because we feel like we are not happy. I think the most important thing is we have to be happy on our own. And then maybe if we are in a relationship, we will bring happiness to the relationship. But if we are not happy on our own, we're going to end up messing it up because it becomes a relationship dependency and need. So I think for me, I think especially these last 1 or 2 years have especially taught me a lot. I would say this year has been quite a challenging year, but I'm learning a lot. I think we should always have that thirst for knowledge and thirst for learning and being better. And I guess I still have that.
Right. So then let me ask you, because you said a lot of important stuff here now. So basically, The Abundance of Less, that was the first book. So how
Yeah.
to be happy, content, I guess we can call it less.
Yeah.
How do you sort of, because most people think they'll be happy if they have the car, the perfect
Yeah.
relationship, or it's
Hmm.
health, it's career, it's money, and it's relationship. Those are the four big ones.
Yeah.
Um, so what do you do? What can a person do in their everyday life to sort of be happy with less? What do you do? It's hard to sort of because in theory it sounds like I think everyone sort of knows this. You're not going to be happy if you have that car or this. If you get to a certain stage, you realize that's not going to make you happy. So I think if you're young, you think that, but then you realize, oh, it's not. But how do you get to a place of happy? Do you have any like, how do you find that peace inside yourself? Do you know that? Do you have any tips?
I mean, I think for me, I I think a big part of it depends on which part of the world you are. Because I think one thing that you talked about a few times was owning a car or owning something, right? I think we have to really move away from this mindset of owning something, whether it's
Yeah.
owning people, owning relationships,
Yeah.
owning marriages, owning things. I think the very model of owning cuts us away from things that are really important. You
Yeah.
know, I've been in Shanghai for 8 years. I don't have a car. Yes, I have a cycle. I have a scooter. I cycle as much as possible. I go to
Right.
gym 3 times a week. I go to yoga once a week. I cook every day. I carry my own lunchbox. I don't order stuff online. I read a lot of books. I have some amazing friends who I spend time with. I have a dog who I walk 2 times a day. And, I really focus on simple things that I can do that are
Right.
within my control. And yes, some of these things take a little bit more time, but then you realize that it's worth it, and you
Right.
actually are, you feel happier and healthier when you do a lot of things with your own hands, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest issues in our life right now is social media. We spend so
Yes.
much time on social media, and that makes us feel incomplete,
Right.
right? And I am really not much on Facebook. I'm not much on Instagram. I do a little bit of WeChat and WhatsApp, but that's more utility, work-based stuff.
Yeah.
I think that is an important thing as well. I mean, I think social media is basically just creating this urge in us to have more recognition, to feel more wanted, to feel more needed. And I think this is something we need to be aware of.
Mm.
So again, I don't have any magic formula. All I can say is, the secret to being happy really is about doing the simple things right, not really basing it on consumption and ownership, but really on sharing and community.
Mm.
I think doing stuff for people around you, being kind to people around you, doing stuff for organizations around you, being good to your colleagues and to your friends, that's very, very important. Having meaningful, honest relationships is really, really important.
Yeah.
That is something, yes, I'm still trying to figure it out. And then at the end of it, yeah, I think when we do these simple things right, I think we become happier and healthier people, and we naturally attract healthier and happier people as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. That this is what it is. For me, you mentioned social media. I think also personal learnings is that, well, it was interesting. I was reading a book about philosophy. I hadn't really
Hmm.
read much about philosophy, but they mentioned two important things. So, let's focus on one thing. Imagine you have two circles, circle in the middle, and you call it circle of control. And you have a bigger circle around it,
Hmm.
circle of concern. So
Yeah,
circle of control is what you can control yourself, which are basically
yeah,
your thoughts. And your
yeah,
thoughts, change your emotions. So your thoughts and your emotions, your beliefs. A belief is just a thought you keep thinking. And then you have your circle of concern, which is everything else, like the weather,
yeah,
social media, things going on in the world,
yeah,
politics, problems, your relationships, and you can't control them. And in focusing on the things you can control, you're sort of left at the mercy of those conditions. So if you
yeah,
manage to sort of and also happiness is a choice. You can decide to
yeah,
be happy. So if you manage to focus on yourself, you try to guide your thoughts by focusing on the good stuff, like really look at the good stuff in your life and focus on them. and try to ignore or turn down the volume of the negative things. And as you do that, you kind of gain momentum. And then like you say, you start to track these things. Like your life becomes a better place somehow. It's like, that's really all you can do, because your thoughts control your experience as you think. So you need to start with those things. You can't start with a car or this external stuff, because it's never going to satisfy you. You only have your thoughts. Like, why do you want a car? Why do you want a relationship? Why do you want those things? You want those things because you think you'll feel better in the having of them. So if you can do a shortcut, so instead of needing those conditions, if you can get to that place using your mind and be happy with what you have, then you're there. You don't need the things. And then, and that goes back to the thing you said about a relationship. You know, you have to first be happy and content and satisfied and know these things. And then you can meet another person, you can fly together, and you can accentuate the happiness that this person has. But you can't rely on them for your happiness. You just fly together then. And So I think that's for me at least. And I think to get there, meditation is wonderful. You mentioned yoga, you know, just exercise, these things.
And I think one thing that people don't emphasize much on or have not thought about enough is the power of community. You know, being a part of a group of like-minded people or good people who are working on stuff that they enjoy, whether it's joining a book club, whether it's joining a gardening club, whether it's joining a cooking club, whether it's joining a yoga club, you know, I think, or volunteering for an orphanage, volunteering for an old age home, you know, I think these are all parts of community service and part of a community. And I think when you start doing this, you meet really nice people and you learn so much from them. And we again, this is not something we learn and we are told, but I always say the purpose of your life is not just to live. You know, I think the purpose of your life should be to pass happiness to other people and to make other people's lives better. And when you do that consistently, honestly, for a period of time, you realize that you get a lot more of your own happiness and personal growth and satisfaction from doing that, and you meet great people along the way. And I think the power of community is really, really out there. It's really important, and I think we should all find things we enjoy doing and try being a part of a group. You know, that really, really helps.
Yeah, you know, there's another thing, really good point. So, in what you mentioned about having fun, I think that's a really key thing. You need to, if you can find things that are fun. I remember this is from Tim Ferriss' podcast. He mentioned it was really, I think he said it in a good way. So he said, so how do you become, everyone says, I want to be happy. But what is that? Like, how do you know, it's very general. It's very wishy-washy. You can't really touch happiness, you know? And he said, well, if he's not happy, he's bored. And what's the opposite of boredom? Is excitement. So he's like, oh yeah, I just want to do things that really excite me. Because when you're excited, and then you also come into the thing called, you know, the flow state, you know, and then you just live in the moment and you're just excited, and then you're gonna be happy if you're excited about things. If you can do fun things that excite you, you got it. I think that's also a concrete way people can look at it. You know, what's exciting? You know, how can I have fun today? Just today. Just how can you find excitement and fun in little moments and just make them more entertaining somehow?
Yeah, and you know, I heard this really nice quote somewhere. Life is not a problem to be solved. It's a mystery to be lived.
Yeah, that's true. This is about
have fun exploring it. Yeah, have fun exploring it. Just don't look at solving problems all the time and being surrounded by tons of mess, you know?
Yeah. And that's state of mind. That's like also interesting.
State of mind. Yeah.
Be a solution seeker, not a problem solver. Because that, you know, I did this crazy retreat in Spain in a hippie community, and one guy said, energy follows attention. And that was pretty deep to me. It sounds really simple, but where you put your attention, like that's there to be explored, you're going to attract adventure and exploration and fun. So it's really like, it's exciting, you know, to put your focus and attention and your thoughts onto cool stuff. So focus on the good stuff, and then more good stuff will come. You don't have to, you can't push away negative stuff. You attract more. So you need to just turn your attention on the cool stuff and exciting things. And then it's just going to snowball from there, I think. It's sometimes difficult because if you're in your negative space when you have momentum, you just kind of have to meditate to go to sleep or something to cut the momentum. But yeah. It's a step away.
Awareness and consciousness is super important, you know. I mean, again, these sound like big words in our modern times. And
Sure.
I think when we are in such an autopilot mode, we completely forget that. But it's so important to be conscious and really, really aware of what you are in, whether it's a relationship, whether it's your job, whether it's your
Right.
community, whether it's just regular things that you're doing in life. And I think it's
Yeah.
important to be aware, because only when you're aware do you really look at it from depth, you know.
Yeah.
It's not just about having a job that pays the bills, but what else is the job offering me? You know, I'm happy in this. Same thing with relationship. You know, yes, the relationship is working fine, and you know, yeah, blah blah blah. But I mean, from the depth of it, you know, is it really fine? I mean, is there something really missing? Can we bring something more into it? I'm not saying don't be happy and satisfied with things, but at the same time, I always say, you know, you also have to identify that you're not just in a state where you're taking things for granted, or where you know you're just letting things happen. Rather than make things happen, you're just letting things happen, right?
Right.
And in the same way, when you do things, it's also one thing I've realized recently is, and I'm still trying to understand this. You know, what is the fine line between not giving up and not letting go, right? When you do something. So I think these are all so many things that come when you become a bit more aware about your life and people in your life and things in your life and you know relationships in your life. And I think this is where I think awareness really really helps.
Yeah. And also that's really interesting. And you touched on a point about, sort of being in autopilot mode. That's also important because, people sort of, they run, you know, so it's, you wake up and then you go to the bathroom or you brush your teeth or you put the coffee machine on and you go to
Yeah.
work and you take the same route. It's like you kind of, the brain is so that it sort of makes little programs in your mind. And it's like different neurons that are mapped together, and you sort of activate different programs in your mind that runs automatically, so you don't have to think about them. And if you're not careful, if you don't sort of try to do something, let's say different, you kind of just run these programs. So how do you step away from the programming? Like, it's hard to when you're in it, you are your thoughts. You can't disassociate yourself from your mind, from these automatic programs. And being aware of that, I think it starts there. And doing things like just try new stuff, like it sounds stupid, but like go take a different route to work, go to a different cafe. It feels uncomfortable somehow because it's outside the programming. But once you do those things, the world kind of opens up a little bit. You become more intuitive, and you allow new stuff to come into your life, and then it's satisfying afterwards. And I think meditation is a great way to step away from those automatic programs.
Yeah. And it's difficult. And, I think people need to,
Of course.
I think, meditation is really, really difficult. But, I think it's not just about the difficulty, and I think it's just about being consistent, and just doing it. And I think somewhere you reach a soft spot and you kind of start appreciating and getting tuned with it.
Yeah.
And for me, I've been doing it continuously for the last, I would say, 6 months. Every day, 15, 20 minutes, 10, 15, 20
Meditation.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. And how does it, has it changed stuff for you?
I'm still asking myself if it's had any effect on me, but I think it's hard to say.
How do you meditate?
I actually use an app, of course. I use an app called Headspace. And I do it 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes every day. And of course, Headspace has different modules inside on relationships, on anger, on on stress, on anxiety, on patience, on everything. So I do those once a day, every morning. So for me, I just want to keep doing it. Yes, like I said, it's not easy. It's very very difficult, but I think the important thing is to keep doing it.
Right. Cool. Yeah, I used to use that app too, and I use it occasionally as well in the evenings sometimes. I found a new meditation, which sounds super simple, but it's really powerful for me. And that is as simple as, so the point of meditation is to quiet your mind. Let's call it that. And I'll use an app, but it's an app that just makes noises. So it's called Sleep Stream. It has one noise, which is called air condition. Just the sound of air condition. And I put those on the headphones and I listened, and it's a focal point for me. So whatever the thoughts stray, I have something to
Uh-huh.
focus on, and because that's the hard part. Some say focus on your breath. For me, the breath is
Yeah.
it's not constant. It's hard.
Yeah.
The air condition, it's so easy to put my mind on that and to stop thought basically. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really crazy how like it puts me in a state which I never had before.
Really? Okay,
Yeah,
I should try.
try it,
Mm-hmm.
man. Like 15, 20 minutes with the air condition noise, or maybe some other noise, water, flow, water. For me, the air
Mm-hmm.
condition. And it really is like, I feel like almost I'm connecting to other stuff. It's like, it's weird. And I never
But,
had
but, but
that
I
before.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think that the challenge with meditation also is choosing the right time and place.
Yeah.
I've realized that if I do it in the daytime or in the evening or at night,
Uh,
I cannot do it properly. For
I agree.
me, the only right time of doing it is after I wake up, after 15 minutes of like walking around and drinking some water and then coming back and doing it. I cannot do it right after I wake up because I'll fall asleep, and I cannot do it before I sleep because there's just too much going on in the mind. And I've realized that for me right now, the best time to do it is, let's say, 10, 15 minutes after waking up and walking around.
That's exactly it. I have the same thing. And I think to analyze what you just said there, I think the reason that you basically said it, but so we talked about attention, energy follows attention. So once you focus on, you get more of. So once you've had a whole, and so that's important of something called momentum. So when you think about things, they gain momentum. The longer you think about things, the more momentum they gain. So if you think
Yeah.
about a negative thing, the more you think about it, it attracts other thoughts like it, and then you have this momentum. So
Right.
it's important to catch your thoughts early, especially if you have negative thoughts. So you can sort of
Mm-hmm.
catch them. You can guide your thoughts into a better place because you know where it's going to end up. If you start thinking about things, and after a whole day of thinking different thoughts, I don't know how many thoughts you have in a day, but a lot of them. You're
I
in
have many of
such a
them.
big momentum. You
Yeah.
really you're making it very difficult for yourself because you're trying to stop that momentum, which is
Yeah.
literally or very very difficult. So
It's
and
very
that's why
difficult.
after you sleep, you're fresh. You don't have any momentum with your thoughts, and then you can easily go into that um,
Yeah.
state.
I
And
agree. I
that's
agree.
what
I
I
agree.
think it is. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, but I think that's where I think the opportunity and the opportunity for the meditation is. You
Yeah.
start where it's easy for you, and then you
Hmm.
take it where it's hard for you, and then when you can
Yeah.
do it right when it's hard for you is, I think, the time when you really, really started doing it right and
Yeah. Yeah.
started really seeing that change in you, right? Because then you can do it at any point of the day, at any place, and
Right.
still be good with it, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. You can play around with it. All right. Cool. So I think those are we've done for about an hour now. I think 58
Yeah,
minutes. So I
yeah.
think those are all the questions that I have for now. We can do this again if you want. I'd love to talk to you again. Really exciting to see what's your next step. So you said you're going to go to India probably. That's like your
Yeah.
4 to 5
So I'm
year
going to
plan.
India next month. I've been spending a lot more time in this part of the hills, about 7 hours away from Delhi,
Okay.
looking around for land.
You're looking for
Like I
land. Okay.
said, I'm looking for 5 to 10 acres of land where I can get the land and start building a learning center there, combined with the farm element. And of
Yeah.
course, big focus is on education for kids, and get kids over from the countries, from the cities, get professionals from the cities, have short-term, long-term courses there where people can participate in, and then really run this entire community of activities. Part of it is on education, part of it is on leadership, and part of it is also on reviving important, significant cultural aspects. Whether it's handloom and traditional handicraft and traditional ways of farming, or traditional ways of construction, or embroidery and Sanskrit as a language, and there's a lot of really, really important things that are getting more and more extinct,
Right. That sounds amazing. Sounds like you have a lot of big challenges ahead of you, and but you're doing it for the right reasons and you're doing the right thing. It seems. I mean, what else is more important than knowledge, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And education, because that's the next generation.
Knowledge that leads to action,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you so much, Nitin. So where can people sort of contact you? What do you have any websites? Do you use Twitter? How can
Yeah,
people get in touch and about these different things?
yeah. So I think they can go to www.greeninitiatives with s.cn, greeninitiatives.cn. And yeah, so all the information is there. And I mean, I check all the emails.
Cool.
So if people want to write to me, they can write me or they can find me on LinkedIn.
Right.
Full name is Nitin Dani,
Yeah.
Nitin, space Dani.
Cool.
So yeah, people can also find me on LinkedIn.
All right. Excellent. All right, man. Thank you so much, Nathan. Great to.
Thank
Thanks for
you
doing
very
this.
much. It was
It's
a
great to
pleasure.
see you again, man. We didn't speak for a long
Yeah,
time, but
for
it's
a
like
long
it doesn't
time.
matter, man. We just instantly
I
it's
think
like
that's
it's
what
like
real
good
connection
friends.
is.
That is what it is, man. Doesn't matter where you are, where you live. You know,
Yeah.
it's love. It's this connection. It's this vibration. It's this.
Yeah, and when you
Yeah,
meet, it starts off exactly where you left it the last time. There's
that's it.
no gaps in between.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Thank you so much, Nathan. So that's
Take
it for
care.
this one.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, man. Okay, I clicked end the broadcast now, so we're off.
Okay.
Oh, wait a
Yeah.
minute. No, I have to do it now. There's two buttons. Okay, I click one.